So the next thing I wanted to show you was the unpaid reserves. So we've taken the idea that what we want to do is we want to soft allocate stock against any type of or any collection of customers that we want. So we went down the route of creating these things called unpaid reserve groups. So if I go to unpaid reserve groups, so it all starts by defining what your groups of customers are. So we did this deliberately so that you could literally create any different combination of customers you wanted to. So in my example here, I've got a set that are for channel, so off-trade, on-trade, specialist customers. I've got another group that's for salesperson, another group that's for tiers of customer, tier 1, tier 2, another one as a house account. So these are just examples, but you can decide how you want to define your group. So we're not tied into any field that's on the customer record itself. You can decide 100% how you want to group your unpaid reserves. So once you've decided on the groups themselves with a name, you then assign your customers to your groups. So if I click on my off-trade and click on number of customers, so these are the customers that are part of, in this case, the off-trade group. A customer can be part of as many different groups as you like. So they could be part of the off-trade, and bizarrely they could be part of the on-trade as well. It's really up to you how you define those groups and how you want them to have access to the items and the stock that we're going to attach to these groups in a second. So to add a new customer to this list, you edit, you come down here and basically you say, oops, let me do that again, and then you just pick the customer, and then they're now part of that group and will have access to any item reserves that are attributed to, in this case, the off-trade group. So you do that for all your groups and your customers. So effectively, if you create a new customer or you're managing, you change your customer groups, then you come in here, you do the admin. You can bulk update this using Rapid Start. So you don't have to come in here and do this manually using Rapid Start. It's really easy. You create your codes first, and then using Rapid Start, you can add your customers to your groups. Once you've done the customers against the groups, then I think logically the next thing is to do is to add the items. So you can see here how many item lines there are for each group. So if I click on the 3, these are the 3 sets of unpaid reserves that we have against the off-trade group. And within each of them, it's telling us how many cases are actually reserved. So this is where you would say, for a particular customer, group of customers, salesperson, this is what you've got access to, this is what we're putting aside for you. And you can assign a review date. If there's anyone that's responsible for it, you would assign a user ID, and then you can just put a manual note to say maybe why it was created or if there's anything special about the group. So as ever in the software, if I click on the filter and remove that group code, you'll see this would be a list of all my unpaid reserves. I could then filter it on where the quantity is more than 0, maybe a review date in the next month, and then those are the ones that I might then be sending over to the assigned user to say, you've got a month to decide what's happening with these, they'll be deleted, they need to be updated, or we need to share them with other people. So you can manage the unpaid reserve, which has always been a bit of an issue, making sure that we don't have unpaid reserves lying around for old stock that can't be sold anymore. So to create the unpaid reserves, again, I can go into the items again just via the tab along the top, just hide the fact box. So to create a new unpaid reserve for stock, I come in here, create a new line, tell it which product the unpaid reserve is for. I'm going to make it for my red leaf. I can then put in a review date, who's assigned to, and then when I edit, I'm shown this card form, and this is where I apply a reservation against my stock. So at the moment, we've just done it against item ledger entries, so physical stock that we've receipted. One of the plans for the future is to be able to assign this against purchase orders or stock coming in, so that you'll be able to create your purchase orders and pre-assign it against unpaid reserves while it's still on a purchase order. And then the process of receipting it will automatically convert it into item ledger unpaid reserves that then you can assign on sales orders.
Do you know roughly how long that might be? Is it in time?
That'll probably be late summer.
Thanks. I knew someone would ask.
So here on this new unpaid reserve actions, click on reserve. So this will show me all the item ledger entries for this particular product across locations and across duty status. And then here I decide how many of each of these I want to reserve. So I'll do all of those, 20 of those, and let's say 5 of those. And when I say close, it'll then reserve them or unpaid reserve them against that particular group. So now only customers in that group have access to these particular these quantities against that stock. So what we're doing in the background is we are effectively creating a reservation against a kind of a house account that's hidden in the background, and that's what's managing all of this, and it's the sales order that then determines which customers have access to which bits of unpaid reserve. So this is the setup. If I close this and go back to my role center and go to a sales order, so I'll create a sales order for a customer that's part of a couple of groups. New. In a second when it wakes up. Here we go. For the salad bar and grill. So you create the order in the same way as you do before. And then you have access here against the prepare button to get unpaid reserves. So if I click on get unpaid reserves, it'll show me those unpaid reserves that this customer has access to. So you'll see in this case, there's lots of items. We can add here the item description to make it a bit easier. And it tells me also which group I've got access to because I'm this particular customer. So then to take the stock, I edit the list, and then I might say, oops, edit list. I might say, I want to take 15 of those perhaps, and then because they're a part of the tier 1 customer group, I might take 10 from there. And then I close this, and then it'll transfer the reservations from this hidden customer or house account onto the sales order itself and reserved it for that particular sales order and customer. And we're also, to make it easier and for auditing, we can tell here that this particular line came from our unpaid reserve number 3 and this one from 14, and which channel the reservation has come from. So when this is posted and the reservations get downdated and the stock is gone, we can go back and we can see which customer or which sales order has taken any particular unpaid reserve, so that we can audit it for any queries that people might have in the future. So now this order is effectively a standard order. I can add other lines to it. I can do anything I might want to do with this. I could, if I wanted to, sell this into reserve rather than for dispatch. It's really just a standard sales order now that would go through any process, integration with the warehouse, picking, patching, etc. So the first release of this will be in about 3 or 4 weeks. We do think we'll be improving it over time. So the ability on purchase order, and if anyone, once they play with it, have ideas about making it easier to navigate round and to find things, then please let us know, and we'll just improve it over time. But we wanted to get something out as a first release so that we can then, it's easier to improve it with people's feedback. So that's unpaid reserves.